Allison. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm really excited to be sharing the new Waffle Flower Quilted Hugs release. This is really amazing if you love sewing, if you know somebody who loves sewing, if you don't love sewing but you love lots of texture. This is a great release. So I have 2 cards that I have finished, several more that I am in the process of finishing. And here is the release right here. You will see there are a lot of dies, a lot of cover plates, which I love, and a lot of stencils. So let's jump into the first stencil. This is the Postage Collage So Fun stencil. There are 5 stencils, and as usual, they are labeled at the top. And they even have suggested colors on each stencil. So here are the brushes I'm going to be using. I'm going to use some of the shader brushes from Waffle Flower, the large blending brushes from Waffle Flower, and then I have some small ones from Simon Says Stamped. These white ones are from their Rainbow Splash line, and you can see the difference in size. And I have my 7.5 by 11 grip mat ready to go. And here are the inks that I'm going to be using. These are all Pink Fresh Studio inks. All right, now there are markings on the stencils that help you line them up with the Postage Collage Die, and that's what I use to cut the paper that you see here. The lines on the stencil just match up with the stitched lines on the die cut. We're going to start with Warm Buff, and I'm going to be coloring the thread spools and the ends of the bolts of fabric or the cardboard on this first stencil. So I am going to be using different colors on each stencil. And if I find myself getting too close to some other areas of the stencil, I'll grab my acetate sheets. These came with my grip mats and they work really well for masking while I'm stenciling because they are held in place by the grip mat. And you know, you can use masking tape, but for me, wasting tape doesn't make sense when I can just use these acetate sheets and clean them and reuse them. Now here I'm coming in with a slightly darker green to add some shading with my shader brush 2+. I love adding shading to my Postage Collage stencils, and I also love customizing them so there are different colors. But here's the truth. You can just use one color per stencil and not worry about shading, and you'll still end up with a fabulous design. I'm just showing you how to step things up a bit. All right, I'm going to use some light gray for the cat's face, as well as the scissors, and there's some parts on the sewing machine as well. So this is the benefit of these small brushes from Simon. I can do all of these little details without having to worry about masking. For the most part, you'll see me mask a few times. Before I move on to the second stencil, I'm going to make sure that I add any more shading that I want to add. And so that was Warm Buff that I was adding, and here we are. Okay, for stencil 2, I'm going to start with my light pink color. And I'm going to do the cat's ears and the flower in the lower corner, or at least I'm calling it a flower. And again, I'm going to come in with a darker color to add shading. Now here I am adding my acetate sheets to mask off some of the stencil. Now my brushes are pretty small. These are, again, the Simon brushes, but you know, I could probably get away with not masking, but I just would rather be safe than sorry. And here I'm adding some shading to the scissors with a darker gray color. And that shading on the scissors in particular really makes a big difference. Now, I am actually going to use some masking tape here so that I can just stencil the rest of this with my green color. Everything else is going to be green, and it was just easier to use tape. And so here's my bigger brush that I'm using, and that comes in handy and makes quick work of this. Again, it would have been even quicker if I just did the whole stencil in one color. I probably would have been done by now. And here's what we have after stencil 2. You saw me adding some shading with that darker green. Now I'm going to jump ahead to the end of stencil 3 where I'm adding some shading to the pink bolt of fabric. I didn't really want to show all the shading or all the stenciling. It's all pretty much the same. Just here I'm adding details to the cat on stencil 4. And here's what we have after stencil 4. It's really starting to take shape here. And now stencil 5 just adds in all of the finishing details. And like I said, I cut some of the stenciling just in interest of time. Now here my stenciling is all done, and I'm coming back in with those acetate sheets. I want to add some shading in each of these postage blocks just to knock down some of the brightness from all the white. And I really do love what this shading does to the overall design. Now there is a stencil that would have made this part really fast and easy. I wouldn't have had to keep moving the acetate around. I just don't have it. And that's the Postage Blocks stencil. I think that came out probably with the first Postage Collage Die. And they have different sizes now. I don't know if they have all the sizes. I know that they have the A6 size because that is actually the one that I have, and I'll show you that here in a minute. So here is that Postage Collage A6 Blocks stencil. So imagine if this were the right size. I could just put the stencil over that whole thing and then do that shading that I just did, and it would have been so much easier. All right, here is the new Postage Collage So Fun stamp. And if you were wondering about the cat's face, here it is. It's in that stamp set. But these little features you could do on your own with a pen or marker. Now here I'm doing my little acetate trick where I stamp right on the acetate, and then I can position my paper underneath the acetate right where I want it to make sure that I stamp in the perfect spot. And look how cute. All right, this is the So Fun die set. You see a bunch of dies at the top of the screen, and I am ink blending these. I cut them in white. So here's some thread spools. Here's some thread. And there's little cute scissors. So cute. So what I did was I colored it in gray, and then I colored it another one in green, and then cut the top off, the green part, to make the tops of the scissors. So that was a fun little detail to add. But here's there's a thimble, there's a pin, there's buttons, and I'll show you something else that's in that set in a bit. All right, I wanted to quickly show you my new favorite color of cardstock. This is Fawn from Spellbinders, and look at it next to Craft cardstock. It's just so much brighter and warmer, and look at how different that looks on there. I'm really loving this. All right, I have made a side folding A2 card base, and here's one of the new dies, the Crosshatch Texture Die. You'll see there's no cutting edge on this die, so I can just put it right onto a card front, and it's a piercing die. So I'm going to run it through my die cut machine, and let's see what we have. And look at that. I love these kinds of dies because it's just added texture in the background. It just makes such a difference. Now on the inside of the card, you'll see the texture as well, which I think is kind of unique, so I don't mind that. All right, before we attach this to the card base, I'm going to do some stamping. Now, I've already stamped a sentiment. This is the new Quilted Hug sentiment set. Lots of fun sentiments for this theme. Now that is the sentiment I had originally planned on. I didn't end up using it, but here is the Postage Collage So Fun stamp. Again, that's where the cat's face came from, and I'm going to use a few elements from here to add some little, postage fun. Here's the original Postage Collage stamp set, and on the back I showed you I also have some Euro currency stamps. Here's the oversized postage stamp set, and I'm going to use the word love right above the cat. So I'm just kind of picking elements from each of these sets. That Forever stamp right there and the hugs inside, that came from the original stamp, and then this comes from the So Fun stamp. And here is the finished card. Now you'll see I did swap out that sentiment. Instead I used the Subsentiment quilted set. That's new. The little strips, you know, I have tons of those. And I just really love this card, especially with those little die cuts. All right, let's move on to the second card. We are going to start with another die. This is the Tiny Square Texture Die. And you can see I cut a piece of off-white cardstock. This is the Tiny Square Stencil. And I'm going to zoom in here so you can see how the stencil lines up with the squares that the die makes. And this die is special because there's several stencils that Waffle Flower has come out with in this release to pair with this die. I'm just going to quickly show you the inking of the stencil. I'm using Oversized. For these stencils, there's 3 in this pack, and I chose a color pattern or color combo that I love now, but I've never really used before. It's kind of vintagey looking. That was Tattered Rose. And here's the second stencil, really easy to line up. And I'm going to use Frayed Burlap. I mean, even the names of these colors kind of go well with the sewing theme, or the vintage sewing theme anyway. So look how pretty that already is. You could just leave it like this, but there's a third stencil that adds detail into those white squares. And for that, I'm going to use Speckled Egg. So you might see me using this color combo again soon because I'm in love with this. It's one I've never used before, and I'm just going to zoom in here so you can see the results of this. Isn't that fabulous? I love this stencil, and of course you can use it without the die, and I will be showing that in a future video, just how these things can be used on their own. Now I'll have another, like I said, I'll have another video. I'll show you the assembly of this card as well as some others, but most of what is on here is from that So Fun die set. There's that sewing machine, and I just think this is adorable. All right, now the frame on that card was used with this new Quilted Frames Die. You'll see there's 2 frames and then these dies that can kind of be used to make quilting looking things. All right, this is a card that I am finishing up, and I'll show you again in a future video how I made a 2-for-1 card. That's how I made this one. And this uses the Dog Silhouette die and the Meandering Texture Die, which is such a fun die. Again, these are all kind of quilting, or things that you can use for quilting, but for anything really. So here is that Meandering Texture Die, and again, there's no cutting edge on this die. So they really took care not to have those cutting edges on their dies. This is the new Clamshell Texture Die. I told you there were a lot of cover dies in this release. I didn't pick a great color to show you that die, but there it is. Now this scissors is from the new Notions die set. I will be making a card with this set, but look at those scissors, and there's this cute little measuring tape. There is a larger thread spool. There's this little pin cushion, and then there's pins that go with it. Just such a cute set. And I'm going to show you the size difference. So here is the smaller die from that other set compared to this larger thread spool. And there's the little scissors from the other set. And that die at the top is are the pins. All right, so clearly I have more cards to finish, so I am going to leave it here. I hope you enjoyed this video and the little sneak peeks of what's to come, as well as just seeing this new collection. Again, even if you don't like sewing, I am a big lover of background dies that provide texture for any design really. So I'm excited about this. If you did like this video, please give me a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.